Hello from Hanover Square. Hope some of you are joining us. I'll give you a few minutes to join us here. Hi, it's good to see everyone again after a bit of an absence, a bit of a vacation. See, I have everything here where I can see your messages, your chat. It's good to see everyone again. I hope everyone has had a good summer. It's good to see a lot of your familiar names and places. It's so nice to see you. Hello, everyone. Like my bonnet, thank you. You might remember I made this bonnet for last November for Evacuation Day and wore it for that event. So I thought I would wear it tonight. I haven't worn it in hard to believe, I haven't worn it in almost a year. So pretty hard for me to believe that a year has gone by since I made this. So thank you for joining me. Tonight we're going to be talking about the life of Major John André, British Major John André. Oh, look at this. We have people from all across the country. This is great. And if you don't know who Major John André was, you'll know by the end of the night tonight. And just to let you know that this is part of a larger project that I'm working on about Major John André, General Benedict Arnold, and that whole series of events that transpired in 1780 with Benedict Arnold's treason and the ultimate thing that happened to John André that we'll talk about tonight. So this is kind of a sample of what that larger video is going to be like. And if you've been following me on social media, you can see I've been traveling all around the places relevant to that throughout the Hudson Valley, taking some pictures, taking some video to put together a really great video following the whole trail of all of those events. And it truly is fascinating. Tonight, I'm just going to give you a preview of that and just talk about the John André, mostly part of that story. Also, I'd like to know from you what you think. I am going to do a special Halloween tour of St. Paul's and Trinity graveyards. I'll be all dressed up as Mrs. Q in costume. So I'll be in costume as Mrs. Q, and Mrs. Q will be in costume for Halloween as well. And I have a couple of options for doing that tour. One option is to walk through the graveyard, bring some people with me, and live stream that on Facebook and YouTube so that everyone can watch. That's one option. I would have to do that in the afternoon because the graveyards close reasonably early. So that would be an afternoon tour on either Saturday, I think more likely Sunday before Halloween. Or I can do the tour virtually from here using all pictures and video that I take in advance. And then I could do it at night from here. And then I don't have things to worry about like weather and crazy people and things like that. So I wonder what you would prefer, which one you like better, walking through the graveyard. Of course, if I do it from here, I can show you a lot more pictures of things and people and events, or if you'd rather me walk through the graveyard. And if I do the graveyard tour, any of you in the New York area are welcome to join me for that tour. It'll be a free tour. You can just tip Mrs. Q at the end of the tour if you enjoy it. So those are the two options that I'm considering. I have some used pictures and videos. Let me know. You can let me know in the comments. Send me a message on Facebook or YouTube. Send me an email. Someone says crazy people in New York. I know it's hard to believe, but there are quite a few people who need some help in that area. And I'm concerned that on Halloween, there might be even more unstable people around than usual. And of course, seeing me in costume might just attract some undesirables. So I'm still considering how to do that. People seem to like the pictures and video and me doing it at night. I could dress in a more outrageous outfit myself too if I stay home and do it from my studio. So Mr. Q would like me to do it from the studio because it's always a little bit safer here. So we'll figure that out, but I will be doing something special for Halloween. And just to give you a hint, I did order some fabric today for something special that I'll be making to wear for that tour. So something brand new outfit for Mrs. Q. I also would like to thank all of you out there who came on my tour of Tap in New York about John André, and some of what's in that tour we'll be talking about tonight. Thank you for those of you who came out. If anyone is interested in doing that tour, let me know, because I can schedule another one. We really had a great time. It was lots of fun. And if anyone would like to do it as a private tour, I do it as a private tour as well, drive you around and show you all the spots. So that's an option. So thank you to all of you. And I will be back on Friday nights again, as usual. Looking forward to seeing everyone. And on Halloween weekend, you'll get to see me twice. On Friday for my regular lecture for the Queens Public Library, and then on Sunday for the special Halloween event I'm planning. And of course, I'll be with you next Friday for a topic I still haven't planned. But for tonight, our topic is British Major John André. And let me find him. I have lots of pictures for you tonight. And there he is. So this is our main character, Major John André, in a pencil sketch of himself. And someone says, I'm busy. I am very busy, and you've missed me. I've missed you too. And I'm really, really happy to be back. I picked up a couple other regular speaking engagements, so I've been busy with lectures and my regular tours as well. So hello to all of you. And thank you for rejoining me after my absence. He was a very handsome young man, and John André, as far as we know, was born in London in 1751. His father was a merchant, and he specialized in trade in the Middle East. His father was from Geneva, Switzerland. I think his mother was as well, but they were London merchants, and young André himself was educated in good London schools, and then after that he attended boarding school in Geneva himself. And I'm laughing because for those of you who've not met him, Doggy Q is here tonight, Quintus Fabius Maximus. So if we have any mishaps with the green screen, it's because he's running around. He just went under my dress here as well. We could have some accidents tonight, but we'll just see what happens. So anyway, he's born into a wealthy enough family to send him to a Swiss boarding school. And Mr. André himself, of course, was fluent in English. He was fluent in French, and he was fluent in Italian. He was also very good in mathematics, and he was phenomenal in the fine arts. As you can see, I think this is taken from a self-portrait. I'm not sure. I'm going to show you definitely some of his drawings along the way tonight. He was very good at drawing, very good at poetry, very good at theater, acting, and all those types of things. And he was a firstborn son. He had 3 sisters and a brother 8 years younger than himself. So it was his job when his father died to assume the family business. So, that's the English way then. The firstborn son takes on the family business. That was to be his future. And as that happened, his father died when he was about 19 years old. He took on the family business. He did not want to do it. André, all of his life, wanted to be a soldier. He wanted to be an officer under the command of the king. That was his one thing he wanted, but he was in love. He was in love with a young woman named Honora Sneyd. And of course, if you want to be a good catch for the ladies, you don't want to be a soldier. You want to be a wealthy merchant. So it served him to work in his father's business, which he did. And then when his father died, he took on that business. Well, even though he took on the business and it was quite impressive and everyone loved him and he was writing letters back and forth to Honora and things were going so well, it seems that at a few social events, he let it slip out that he preferred to be a soldier and not a businessman, not a merchant. And he and Honora also, I should say, were separated by distance. She was living out in the country somewhere. He was still in the city. And as there were no definite promises made between them, other young men courted her, and she eventually married someone else. She became engaged to someone else. And André was heartbroken by this. And he carried a little picture of her with him that he drew everywhere he went, even after this breakup. Well, now that he had no reason to be a merchant, he gave up his father's business, provided for his family, and bought himself a commission in the king's army, and off to America he came. And he arrived here in late 1774, I think early 1775, and he was very quickly taken prisoner by the New York commander, General Richard Montgomery. And you might know Montgomery was commanding the New York regiments that adventure into Canada in 1775. Montgomery would be killed in December the Battle of Quebec. But before that, he took a young John André prisoner in a battle somewhere along the way in Canada. I'm not sure the name of the battle. He took him prisoner. So John André now is a prisoner of war, and he spent some time in another general's home on his way to the prison camp in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I believe that general was a gentleman named Philip Schuyler. And as an officer and a gentleman, André, of course, was invited to spend a few days in the home of General Schuyler, where he seemed to be very much liked by the Schuyler daughters. And may I say, excuse me for saying this, but it is likely that Major André was the most well-bred, well-educated, finest gentleman that any of the Schuyler daughters would ever meet, including the ones they married. I'm sorry I had to say it. Doggy Q is here, excuse me. And there goes the green screen, and Mr. Q is going to grab the screen for us. I think it's going to be a night of adventure here. Oh, there he is, if you can see him down here in the corner. So anyway, excuse us.
Okay, hold on.
Mr. Q, I think Doggy Q needs to go outside or in his pen, as he is not accustomed to this. They move the screen over. Excuse us as we fix our set. I just need a little bit more on this side. Okay, so what is life without a little of the unexpected pandemonium? As I was saying, yes, Doggy Q is redecorating. As I was saying, he is likely the most well-bred, well-educated, finest gentleman known to the Schuyler daughters, including the gentleman they married. And I will just leave that there for you. Then he was Captain André, spent a few days in the Schuyler home, and continued on to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where he was held as a prisoner of war for more than 1.5 years, or about 1.5 years, before he was returned to the British. While he was in Lancaster, he was very well liked, and he gave drawing lessons to a number of children in the town and became the local art and drawing instructor. Very, very well liked. And eventually made his way back to New York under the command of General William Howe. And I have a whole bunch of pictures here, and I'm going to make sure I don't miss any in sequence. What is this picture? Oh, okay, this one's not coming up for a while. So as I was saying, comes to New York under the command of General William Howe. And you may know that General Howe will take the army to Philadelphia in an attempt to capture the Continental Congress. And off to Philadelphia goes young John André. Now, André, because of his social skills and his art skills and things like that, one of his jobs is going to be as the social coordinator for parties for the British officers. And while he is in Philadelphia, of course, he's going to meet all of the loyalist families there, and he's going to meet the daughter of a very well-known loyalist family, the Shippen family. And this is the daughter of Edward Shippen, and I'm sure all of you know who she is. She is Peggy Shippen. And this is a drawing of Peggy made by, Major André, while he knew her. And of course, you see her hair up in the high roll there. Young Miss Shippen was out in society. Major André and all the officers were in society. And of course, they all became social friends. And while they were in Philadelphia, they received notice that General William Howe was retiring his commission and returning to England. And at that time, they threw a big party for him, a ball that they called the Meschianza. This was completely organized by Major André. And this is the invitation that Major André drew for everyone, the invitation to the Meschianza. He called it Meschianza, which was an Italian name he made up for a party. I'm just reading. I'm reading all the comments. That is some high hair she had. The high roll was very popular at that time for the young ladies. Who would you equate John André looking like now? Hollywood actor. Well, I would say that the gentleman who played him on turn was perfectly cast. So for those of you who know who that was, You can look up Turn, John André. He was perfectly cast as André. He was a little bit older than John André, but it didn't matter. He played him quite well. So the Meschianza becomes a big ball or party that they throw. It's a day-long celebration, and the men all appeared as knights of the Round Table, and the women as their ladies. And this, I mentioned, is the drawing that John André did, and everyone would have received an invitation drawn and addressed by Major André. So this is one of the remaining invitations. And this is Major André dressed up as one of the knights of the Blended Rose, they were called. And this is a self-portrait of him on a horse as one of the knights of the Blended Rose. The other group of knights were the Knights of the Smoky Mountain. And I think they wore black and orange. And they started the day with a regatta on the river, which I think John André's knights won. In the afternoon, they had games and jousting, and at night they had a massive ball that went on until 3 a.m., which included, big tents, ice sculptures, chandeliers, Persian rugs. I think 85 different dishes were served. It was quite an event, with fireworks at midnight. So it was quite an incredible event at great cost to the taxpayers of England, for which Major André was lampooned quite badly from both sides. The Americans made fun of the English, saying they could throw this magnificent ball and party, they could joust, but they couldn't manage to beat an army made up of farmers. So it was quite bad reflection on Major André after the whole thing happened. And as you know, the English shortly after returned to the city of New York. And they sent off General Howe, and Sir Henry Clinton then became the commander in his place. And just like Philadelphia, André became the director of social life in New York. And he was known for running some very risque parties, including what would have been the meetings of the Hellfire Club. And here's a print of the Hellfire Club, and you can see that all the attendees look like demons. The Hellfire Club was a very old club dating back more than 100 years, even at that time, that met in London. Benjamin Franklin was a member, as were members of Parliament. They did things like dress up in costumes, they got drunk, they took drugs, they engaged in orgies. It was quite a place. So, of course, in America, it's seen as a demonic organization. For those of you who watched the TV series Turn, there is an episode in Turn that represents John André running an evening of the Hellfire Club. You might remember it. Both Caleb Brewster and Anna Strong get themselves invited to a party that André is having. And when Mr. Brewster arrives, the gentlemen are all around a table drinking and singing bawdy songs. And André's manservant arrives and says, "The flowers you ordered are here," and all the ladies come in. And you know what kind of ladies they are, I won't say, including Anna Strong, who really doesn't realize what she's got herself into. And they realize then that this is a drinking and sex party, and both Brewster and Anna Strong get out of there before anything too bad happens to either one of them. So there's a really slight reference to it in Turn. So this would be the kind of parties the officers frequently threw in New York. And here I have Sir Henry Clinton, who would be André's commander during this time. André was very talented, got along quite well with Sir Henry, and Sir Henry eventually made him his assistant or adjutant general. And André, I think, was the youngest officer ever to be promoted to that position. And doing some recent research, I found that Sir Clinton's request was initially turned down because André was so young and not of a high enough rank. So they increased his rank in order to make him eligible for the position. And he was given the position, as Sir Henry said, he would have no one else. That he simply wouldn't have the position then if they wouldn't give it to André. And he was given permission. So André was promoted to this very high position, pretty much second to Sir Henry. He also ran the Secret Service, or the spy agency for the British. And André had a whole host of spies that he ran throughout the New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia area, who reported information back to him. Now, during this time, he also was still in touch with young Peggy Shippen, and I saw a little note that he wrote to her where he said that doing the Meschianza pretty much turned him into a milliner, right? Somebody who bought and sold fabric and made clothes. So he said, "If there is anything I can do for you, find for you in the good shops here in New York that you would like, let me know. I'll buy it and I'll be happy to send it on for you for your clothes and your accessories. So they're still in touch. Well, you might know that the Americans, of course, are going to take possession of Philadelphia, and Benedict Arnold will become the American commander at Philadelphia, and he'll marry young Peggy Shippen, and she will become Peggy Shippen Arnold. There is a great age difference between the two, but Arnold is smitten by this young, beautiful woman, and she is equally taken by the powerful General Benedict Arnold, and so they marry. André remains in communication with her during this time. Now, around 1779, André starts getting letters from someone who calls himself Gustavus. And this Gustavus seems to be a rather high-ranking commander in Washington's army, and that he's sending him really key intelligence about Washington's movements, the army's movements, Washington's communications, all of these things. And by 1780, André and Clinton have come to suspect that Gustavus is no other than General Benedict Arnold. Incredible. They cannot believe who they have on the hook here. They can't believe who's communicating with them. And as time goes on, they become more and more certain that it is Arnold. Now, this Gustavus starts telling them, I can do much more for you, and I would like to come over to your side, and I can deliver a big package for you if you would like to negotiate it. A key position held by the Americans, the fort at West Point. And for those of you who know the geography, West Point is just north of New York City, on the Hudson River, a kind of a bottleneck at the Hudson River. And because the Americans controlled this point on the Hudson River, the English were not able to move north out of New York City and control the Hudson. If the English controlled the Hudson, that would cut off the colonies from each other, New England from the other colonies, and give them access up into the interior. So this is a key point. The problem is, Arnold is not the commander at West Point. But he says, I can do this. I can have myself put in command of West Point and give it to you, and if you will have me over to the other side. And they start talking about this, and the English aren't quite so sure he can really deliver on this. And then news breaks that Benedict Arnold has been placed in command of West Point, not only in command of West Point, but the left flank of the army, meaning the whole army based along the eastern side of the Hudson River. So pretty shocking command. And now they're sure that it is Benedict Arnold that they're communicating with. As this goes on, Arnold begins to name his price, how much money he wants to switch sides, how they'll work all of this out, how it will be done. And he says, in order to seal this deal, I would like an officer of equal importance to me to come and meet me under a flag of truce in secret. And Sir Clinton is not so sure who he wants to send. And the gentleman he wants to send, unfortunately, is busy on another project. And André says, I will go. I will go up and I'll meet him. And Clinton knows that probably André is the best choice to go meet him, but he has many reservations about sending him. At this time, the British have a warship that's parked just south of West Point. It's called the Vulture. And Arnold writes back and he says, have your officer meet me, and I'll come aboard the Vulture and we'll speak. I will give you proof of everything. We'll part, and your officer can return to New York. So the plan is for André to make his way up to the Vulture. He's going to be accompanied by another capable British officer. And Sir Henry, who is like a father to young André, gives him some very specific instructions. He tells him, first, do not leave the Vulture. Looking at your comments here. Do not leave the Vulture. Do not remove your uniform, and do not accept any papers from Arnold. You're a capable commander. You can remember everything he tells you. Don't take anything committed to paper. Don't take off your uniform. Don't leave the Vulture. And when Major André and the other commander, he is Colonel Robinson, arrive on the Vulture, the emissary comes from Arnold, and there's no Arnold. And he says, General Arnold will meet you at a secure home nearby. And Robinson, right away, he says, I'm not leaving this ship. I don't think you, Major André, ought to leave the ship either. And André says, I believe Sir Henry would approve of me doing this, as this is such an important task. And he leaves the ship with these gentlemen, and he goes to the nearby home of Joshua Het Smith. And this is an old photo of the house. It's no longer there. It's in West Haverstraw. And I recently took a picture of the marker that's where the house was. It's on a little highway that goes through there. They meet at the home of Joshua Het Smith. The Smiths are a very interesting family. I'll go much more in depth about them in my long form video I'll be making, but there's quite a lot of doubt about which side the Smiths are on. His brother had been a very well-known rebel lawyer who suddenly switched sides and is now an advisor to Sir Henry in New York. And there's quite a lot of guesswork about the Smiths. So he meets with Arnold at the Smith house. You can see it's on a hill. It overlooked the Hudson. And while they were there, they could see the Vulture leaving its spot where it was docked. It had come under fire from American forces. So André spends the night there because apparently it's too dark by the time they get to the documents for him to actually see the documents that Arnold brought. They spend most of the next day going over the documents. Arnold leaves. And he says, well, since you're going to be traveling to New York on horseback, you ought to travel in civilian clothes. Take the papers I've given you, hide them in your boots, wear civilian clothes. He also tells André that he should use the other side of the Hudson, or the east side of the Hudson, rather than the west side where they're meeting, to travel back to New York. Major André is skeptical about this because that side is controlled mostly by the Americans. So Benedict Arnold writes a pass to him to get him through there in the name of his code name, John Anderson. He says this will get you through the American encampments and back to New York safely. Just make sure you travel as a civilian. So it's a long journey as André changes into his clothes. He's now done all three things, right, that Sir Henry has told him not to do. He left the Vulture, he took off his uniform, and he's carrying documents. He goes north with Joshua Het Smith, with Mr. Smith. They cross the Hudson, they begin their trip south, and after about a day, Smith leaves him, and André continues on his way alone, where he is eventually captured. There's that capture of André, where he's captured in Tarrytown by three men in Tarrytown. And they're not quite sure what to make of each other. There's a little confusion over which side André is from. Is he English? Are they English? Is he American? Are they American? And many years later, then Congressman Benjamin Talmadge says that he believes these three men were nothing but robbers who were willing to rob anyone on the road. And had André had the money to pay them off, they would have simply let him go. And it's not only Colonel Talmadge who talks about them. They're called skinners and cowboys. But Colonel Aaron Burr says the same thing, that officers began on both sides carrying ransom money with them to just pay these guys off, that all they want is money, and they'll let any officer go who can pay them the ransom. And Burr said he would be happy, to hang, scores of them if he could, that, they were troublesome and he hated them. And Talmadge pretty much said the same thing about them. Anyway, these three men become heroes later because they captured André, even though they don't know who he is. They turn André over to the nearest American camp. The commander of that camp can't figure out who he is either. He's got a passport from General Arnold. He has papers in General Arnold's hand. And so this commander, Colonel Jameson, decides to send André and the papers back to Arnold. But he's sending them separately. So off they go. And in the meantime, someone else returns to the camp, and that is Colonel Benjamin Talmadge. Now, Talmadge, is the spy master for the Americans, and he's familiar with the name John Anderson, as he had received a letter from General Arnold saying that if you happen to come by a John Anderson, I am working with him, and please allow him safe passage. So Talmadge right away knows something is not right about this John Anderson and is quite upset when Jameson explains the type of documents he was carrying. Now, Talmadge himself realizes at this point that Arnold is a traitor, and he tries to convince Jameson to allow him to take men with him directly to West Point and arrest Arnold. He even tells Jameson, you can disavow any knowledge of this if you want to, but I won't do it without your permission. And Jameson refuses to give him permission, but Talmadge is able to get Jameson to send for Anderson. And so some men go out and Anderson is returned to the camp. Meanwhile, the papers go on to Arnold. Talmadge says when he sees John Anderson walking around, he says it was clear to him that this man was bred to arms, that he is an English gentleman, an aristocrat, bred to arms. Clearly, he says this is an officer, this is someone big. He goes over and introduces himself, and at that time, they receive orders to move this John Anderson to another encampment, and it is the commander there who realizes that John Anderson has a heavy burden. He takes him out for a walk in a garden, and John Anderson unburdens himself and says, I'm really Major John André. I'm the Adjutant General to Sir Henry Clinton. I was just meeting with Benedict Arnold, and I would like to write a letter to your General Washington and explain all of this to him, as he will realize that I was traveling under a flag of truce and will allow me to return to Sir Henry. So André wrote a 4-page letter to General Washington. It was delivered, and Washington asked Benjamin Talmadge to bring André to West Point. That's the first leg of their journey. So Talmadge accompanies André to West Point. Interestingly, General Washington will never see John André personally. He's never in the same room with him, and he never speaks to him. He only speaks to Colonel Talmadge. And at that point, after they speak, General Washington instructs Colonel Talmadge to take Major André to Tappan, where Nathaniel Greene is in command. And he says, and I will meet you there, and we'll hold a military trial. We'll hold a court-martial and see what the generals think. And Colonel Talmadge will accompany Major André to Tappan. And this is a long, circuitous path for them to get there. So they're together in total. All this journeying is going on over a period of about 4 days, where Colonel Talmadge and Major André become very good friends. And at a point in their journey, Major André asked then Major Talmadge, what do you think will happen to me? And Major Talmadge says, well, I'm sure you know the story of my good friend and brother from Yale, Captain Nathan Hale. And André says, well, of course I know the story, but our situations are completely different. Why would you compare us? And Major Talmadge said to him, why, sir, your situations are exactly the same, and I fear you will meet the same end. And he said at that time, Major André became very agitated. Well, of course, they eventually make their way to Tappan, where André is held under strong guard with some instructions from General Washington that he is never to be verbally or physically abused. He is to be given any clothes he requests. He is able to be cleaned up, and he should be able to write to Sir Henry in New York, and they observe all of those. And next up is André's trial, and here's a painting of André's trial. André was put on trial by a whole host of Washington's best, most experienced generals, and a number of them knew Major André already. One of them was Henry Knox, and also Nathaniel Greene. Both knew André, as somehow Lafayette had run into him somewhere along the way as well. And they find him guilty of spying and sentence him to death. Now, some interesting things going on here, and that in his own memoirs, the Marquis de Lafayette tells us that young Alexander Hamilton was obsessed with saving Major André's life, that he worked so hard to keep them from sentencing him to death. And once he was sentenced to death, he tried to make the death sentence by firing squad rather than hanging, as the court-martial suggested. And some people have suggested that this is partly the work of young Miss Schuyler, who is very endeared to John André and is asking young Hamilton, her fiance at that time, to try to advocate on behalf of André. I'm not sure they would have been able to communicate that back and forth, but it is a possibility. At any rate, Lafayette says that Hamilton simply, did everything in his power. Andre believed he was going to die. He accepted his death. He wrote to Sir Henry, told him he was sentenced to death, and would he please send his formal regimentals and his servant up to him, which Sir Henry did. What Andre does not know, though, is that there's a flurry of letters going back and forth between Sir Henry and General Washington, and also some interesting negotiations about possibly freeing Major Andre in lieu of Benedict Arnold. It's all going on behind the scenes secretly. And Sir Henry seriously considered Washington's proposal. Washington's proposal was that if you send us Arnold, we will free Andre immediately for you, as we have no reason to want to hang Andre, as we would much rather hang Arnold. But in the end, Sir Henry refused because, of course, he had other people high in Washington's command who were sending him information. And he knew that if he gave up Arnold, all of those sources would dry up. So in his own words, he said that Andre was worth 5 Arnolds to him, but, he couldn't do it. And in the end, you all know what happens. Major Andre is hanged at Tappan for his crime of operating as a spy. And let me move out of the way. This is a print that was circulated, and you can see Andre on the top and Arnold on the bottom, showing Andre hanging at Tappan. And this was watched by many, many people who went out to watch the hanging of Andre. And I should tell you that although, in modern times, that everyone is very sad about the hanging of Andre, but understand that he would have undone all of the American operations in the Hudson Valley. So the people of Tappan and Haverstraw and all the local towns were quite happy to see Andre hanged that day, although Talmadge himself says that he and the other officers found it quite sorrowful. Lafayette cried, as did a few others, and Talmadge himself said that when Andre hanged, he felt as if his knees were going to buckle and he was going to fall on the ground himself. So a great tragedy, seen as a murder on the part of the British, as they said that Andre was traveling under a flag of truce offered by General Benedict Arnold and was not a spy. And Lafayette himself said that that might have been true, but that they were unanimous in the trial that Andre, by being in civilian clothes with the other side's papers and traveling within enemy lines, was operating as a spy as much as they liked them, that the punishment was suitable for the crime. Now, one of the things a number of people still ask today, I have a picture here I have to find for you. Give me a moment, as I made the picture, but I didn't have it here. I made it late. People wonder, was Major Andre's hanging in retaliation for the hanging of Captain Nathan Hale in 1776? And Lafayette says he believes it was. He says he believes that the generals at that time were so angry over still the hanging of Nathan Hale and the treatment of Nathan Hale and the treason of Arnold, that they really took out their bloodlust on Major John André. So many people believe that the two hangings are related, and that this was ultimately the final justice for the hanging of Captain Nathan Hale. So that is a very quick look at the life of John André and the very complex story of him and Benedict Arnold. So just a preview of a much bigger, much more in-depth look I'll be taking of this in a video that I'm working on now for you. So you can watch for that video. Do you have any questions or comments you'd like to share with me? I'm going to look through your comments. Oh, yes. Mr. Cibola says that a lot of his fate had to do with the American that was executed in his, yes, and that would have been Nathan Hale. You are correct. Someone tells me that's fantastic. Thank you so much. It is really great to be back. Imagine how Washington felt when Washington saw that Arnold had passed on not only the plans to West Point, but confidential documents in Washington's own hand. He said he was just flabbergasted. He said, Whom can we trust now? In other words, I can trust no one now. If Arnold would do this to me, I can't trust anyone. Whom can we trust now? Oh, and I think I forgot to show you one picture. As you might know, that's Arnold, and that's the devil behind him. And this is Arnold was hanged in effigy in many American cities after this happened. So this is a depiction of Arnold and the devil, and Arnold going on to his hanging. He, of course, was never truly hanged, only hanged in effigy. Arnold lived a very long life, which I'll go into, in the video I'm making. He and Peggy lived a very long life. You're happy I'm back. I'm happy I'm back. And it's going to be great to joining you again on Friday nights. Would Andre have stayed in America? No, Andre was tied to England. Andre said that when he was captured, he saved Honora's picture in his mouth the first time he was captured and taken as a prisoner of war, and saved it. And in turn, the TV show, Andre has a locket with a woman's picture in it. And he gives the picture to Benjamin Talmadge, to current Major Talmadge. And or was he? I think he was a major at that time. I get mixed up with everyone's rank changing. So Colonel Talmadge, and he asks him to preserve it for him, but to never tell him who the lady was. In turn, they suggest to us that the picture was of Peggy, but everyone who was a biographer of Andre believed the picture was of Honora Sneyd. And of course, Talmadge, being a gentleman, took that knowledge to his grave. He never revealed to anyone who the lady was, but it is believed it was Honora Sneyd. I have a question here from Miss Tucker, who, by the way, is writing a book about the spy ring that operated at that time, about the Culper spy ring. So we're all looking forward to that coming out. And of course, when it comes out, I'll be telling you all about it and making sure you buy it. Didn't John André pull Benjamin aside right before the hanging to thank him for his friendship and kind treatment during the time? Yes, he did. And this was emotionally devastating to Talmadge. And Talmadge didn't talk about this for nearly 50 years. We fast forward to 1833. Benjamin Talmadge is now a retired congressman. There's a very famous historian at that time, Jordan Sparks, who is writing about all of this. And he writes to Talmadge, and he says, of course, you're the only person with intimate knowledge of this still alive. And I wonder if you would answer some questions for me and tell me about your experiences. And in his letters to him, Talmadge says, first, I have to remain anonymous. You can't use my name. And secondly, I'm going to tell you that all these years later, there has not been one time that I've looked back on this that it has not brought tears to my eyes. So this is over 50 years. He says, as is one of the most difficult experiences of my life. This is how moving it was, and how close Talmadge and Andre had become. And the fact that Andre thanked him for treating him so well and being such a gentleman to him was just devastating for Talmadge to then watch him die. And Talmadge, said to Sparks, it still pains me to this day that Arnold lived while Andre had to die. So very difficult for Talmadge 50 years later. And in these letters, he says he's never going to talk about it again. So just give you an idea how striking that was to him. And Perry says to tell you all that the book will be written under the pen name Perry Patterson, author. Yes, and you can find some of her other work on Amazon. And she's posting on Facebook, so you can go over and see her posts there. And I'm going to be doing her podcast in December, so you'll hear more about that and more from her. So keep up with her work as she's writing something really interesting about the Culper spy ring for you. Wasn't Joshua Huddy, who was hanged by the Loyalists in Monmouth County, New Jersey, a nail in Andre's coffin? I don't know much about that hanging. I only know about the Hale connection to that, but this could be possible as well. There was a lot of tit for tat and things going back and forth at that time, and anger about things that commanders on both sides had done. Andre indeed was the better man. I'll just tell you a little bit before I go. Yes, Perry says I'll be on the Talking Book podcast in December. So you can look up the Talking Book podcast and check them out before I'm even on. Start listening to them now. I'll tell you a little bit about some intrigue on the British side. the commander who hanged Nathan Hale was Sir William Howe. And Howe didn't even give Hale a trial at all. He just looked at him. He was in civilian clothes. He had his officer's commissions and some papers, and he said, "Oh, he's a spy, hang him." And they left Hale's body hanging for 3 days, buried in an unmarked grave. It was just a horrible, horrible treatment. Well, some of you might know that Sir Henry and Sir William did not get along at all, at all. They couldn't even stand to be in each other's presence. And I wonder if later, after Sir Henry returned to England, there were any words between the two men, because it was Howe's really disgraceful treatment of Hale that led to Sir Henry losing, indeed the crown, losing one of their finest men. And I'm going to set out to see if there's any mention of that in any of Sir Henry Clinton's papers and include that in my upcoming video, because that would be a truly fascinating thing to find out. I don't know, but I've been looking through Sir Henry's papers to see if I can find something about it. Because, you know, they were all aristocrats and gentlemen, but they tended to say some very cutting things to each other at times. We have some people who are following Perry's Facebook page now. Great, thank you for doing that. Mr. Fahey wants to know if Andre's hanging was a bit of a payback for Nathan Hale. Lafayette believed it was. Lafayette absolutely believed it was. And I think Talmadge, I don't know if he thought it was so much a retribution as he thought it was just. Talmadge in the end said it was a just punishment for the crime. I think that, you know, Talmadge thought that, you know, André was acting as a spy. He was in civilian clothes. He had communications from the other side, and he was behind enemy lines. I think, you know, Talmadge, as much as it hurt him, thought it was pretty clear-cut case that qualified him as a spy, and that this whole, you know, rule of flags just didn't apply in that case because André was out of uniform. So the rules of flags didn't apply. And I don't want to get into the complicated rules of flags, but I will in the other video, and I'll tell you more about what that was all about and what the English were arguing that meant. Sad, but it had to happen. It did. And of course, one of the, I think, people who was most blunt about that was Culper himself, Abraham Woodhull, who wrote back to Culper Jr. and to Colonel Talmadge saying that, you know, you're all so sad to see, you know, the death of John André, but, you know, as we might say in your time, he told them to get a grip, as André was the enemy and would have undone everything. You know, they could have lost the entire war. And so don't be so sorry about the death of André, as he was your enemy and would have undone everything. So, you know, again, we can look to Abraham Woodhull as being a bit of a crotchety, more direct in his thoughts and expressing his thoughts character of that time, more blunt, I might say. Oh, and here we're getting some adult comments from Tinder, so you might want to just ignore those. I see somebody says, "Oh, brother," if you're on YouTube, you're seeing these Tinder comments. Oh my gosh. Did I ever tell all of you about the night I was getting dressed to do Mrs. Q, and we were getting a food delivery, and I was almost dressed. I had on my wig, all of my makeup, but I didn't have on my overdress. I only had on my stays and my underdress and everything. And Mr. Q wasn't here. I had to answer the door. And the look on the delivery man's face was priceless. And after I closed the door, I thought, oh my gosh, I bet he thinks I have an OnlyFans. That's all I could think of. I bet he thinks I'm on OnlyFans or something. So that was quite weird. When I go out in my neighborhood, I always have on all of my clothes as a proper lady. So thank all of you. Oh, someone wants to dress like this for work one day. It's very comfortable, I must say. It's more comfortable than people believe. It's very comfortable and very becoming, as you can see every night, every week with me. So thank you for joining me. And again, let me know about that Halloween tour. If you'd like me to walk through the graveyard or do a more, you know, spooky type of thing from here in my studio, I can do it either way, but it will definitely be a special Halloween weekend tour for all of you. Thanks all of you for joining me. I'll see you again next Friday. And I haven't thought up the topic yet. If you have a topic, send it to me while I'm trying to figure out what to talk about next week. Until then, everyone have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you every Friday again here from Hanover Square with Live with Mrs. Q.